My entitled ex-husband crashed my job interview and demanded I leave. The elevator doors slid open on the 15th floor of Morrison and Associates, and I smoothed down my navy blazer one last time. 3 years. 3 years since I'd worn professional clothes or sat across from a hiring panel, and now here I was, 34 years old and trying to convince a room full of strangers that I still had what it took to be their senior marketing manager. "You've got this, Sarah," I whispered to my reflection in the polished elevator doors. The salary alone, $78,000 a year, would change everything for Emma and Jake. No more choosing between new school shoes and groceries. No more explaining why we couldn't afford the field trip fees. The receptionist, a woman about my age with kind eyes, smiled as I approached. "Sarah-chan? They're ready for you in conference room B." My heels clicked against the marble floor as she led me down a hallway lined with awards and company photos. Morrison and Associates was everything I'd dreamed of working for: innovative campaigns, high-profile clients, the kind of place where creativity actually mattered. When their recruiter called last Tuesday about my application, I'd literally jumped up and down in my tiny kitchen. "Right through here," the receptionist said, opening a heavy glass door. 3 people sat around an oval conference table: Rebecca Morrison herself, a silver-haired woman I recognized from industry magazines, David Kim, the creative director whose work I'd studied obsessively, and Jennifer Walsh, HR director, who stood to shake my hand. "Sarah, wonderful to meet you in person," Jennifer said. "Please, have a seat. Can we get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great, thank you." I settled into the leather chair across from them, my portfolio arranged neatly beside me. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking. Downtown Seattle stretched out below, Elliott Bay sparkling in the October sunshine. "We were incredibly impressed with your previous work at Hendrix Communications," Rebecca began, flipping through what I assumed was my resume. "The Cascade Coffee campaign you spearheaded increased their market share by 32%, correct?" 34%, actually. I felt my confidence building. "We targeted the 18 to 34 demographic through a combination of social media storytelling and experiential marketing events. The morning ritual campaign resonated because it wasn't just about coffee, it was about those quiet moments of self-care before the day begins." David leaned forward, interested. "And you developed that concept entirely in-house?" "I did. I also managed a team of 6 creatives and coordinated with external vendors to execute the pop-up experiences in 12 cities across the Pacific Northwest. It felt so good to talk about my work again, to remember who I used to be before Mark convinced me that Emma and Jake needed me home full-time. Before he gradually isolated me from colleagues and professional networks. Before I became financially dependent on someone who wielded that dependence like a weapon." "That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need here," Rebecca said. "Our clients are looking for fresh perspectives, and frankly, we've been struggling to connect with younger demographics. Your background suggests you understand how to bridge that gap." Jennifer made a note on her tablet. "Now, I do want to address the employment gap. You've been out of the workforce for 3 years?" My chest tightened slightly. "We'd rehearsed this." "Yes, I took time to focus on my children during a difficult divorce. But I've stayed current with industry trends through online courses and freelance consulting projects. I'm ready to dive back in completely." "Completely understandable," Rebecca nodded. "Many of our best employees have navigated similar transitions. Life experience often translates to better consumer insights." That's when I heard the commotion in the hallway. The voices outside were getting louder, something about needing to see someone immediately and "this is urgent family business." My stomach dropped even before I recognized the familiar tone of entitled demand. "I'm sorry," Jennifer said, glancing toward the door with a slight frown. "Our receptionist is usually very good about managing interruptions during interviews." I forced myself to focus on Rebecca, who was pulling up something on her laptop. "We'd like to show you the Morrison account we mentioned in our initial conversation. It's a challenging rebrand for a tech startup that's been struggling to define their voice." But the voices were getting closer, and my hands were starting to shake. Because that voice, demanding, insistent, cutting through the professional calm of this office like a rusty knife, belonged to Mark. "The company's called Innovate Tech," David was saying, completely oblivious to my growing panic. "They burned through 2 agencies already because they keep changing direction mid-campaign. We think your background in tech marketing could be exactly what they need." "That sounds like an exciting challenge," I managed, though my voice sounded far away even to my own ears. Mark couldn't be here. He had no reason to be here. More importantly, he had no way of knowing where I was. I'd been careful not to mention the interview to anyone except my sister Amy, and she would never. The conference room door burst open. "Sarah. There you are. We need to talk. Now." Mark stood in the doorway like an avenging angel in his charcoal Tom Ford suit, the one he wore to close big deals. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his expression a mixture of righteous anger and wounded husband, a look I knew he practiced. Behind him, I could see the receptionist hovering helplessly, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she was saying. "He just pushed past me, said it was a family emergency." "Mark." My voice came out as barely a whisper. The 3 people across from me were staring in confusion and growing alarm. "What are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you doing here?" He stepped fully into the room, and I noticed he was carrying a manila folder. Whatever this was, he'd planned it. "You're supposed to be picking up Emma and Jake. It's my custody day, Sarah, and you're sitting here playing career woman instead of taking care of our children." My mind reeled. "Mark, it's Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. The kids are in school until 3:15. And it's not your custody day until Friday. Don't lie to me." His voice had that sharp edge that used to make me flinch. "I have the custody agreement right here. Today is October 15th. My day." Jennifer cleared her throat. "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of an interview. If this is a family matter, perhaps you could discuss it privately." Mark turned his attention to her, and I watched him shift into the charm mode that fooled everyone who didn't have to live with him. "I apologize for the interruption, Ms. Walsh." "Jennifer Walsh, HR Director." "Ms. Walsh, I'm Mark Chen, Sarah's ex-husband. I wouldn't have disturbed you if this wasn't urgent." He opened the manila folder with theatrical precision. You see, Sarah has a pattern of prioritizing her own interests over our children's welfare. That's actually why our marriage ended. The room went dead silent. I felt like I was drowning in plain sight, watching my dream job evaporate while Mark orchestrated my humiliation with the skill of a conductor. Rebecca's expression had shifted from confused to deeply uncomfortable. David was staring at his hands. Jennifer looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. And Mark smiled. I can see you're all busy people, Mark continued, his voice dripping with false concern as he addressed the hiring panel. But surely you understand that children come first? Sarah seems to have forgotten that basic principle. My face burned with humiliation as I watched 3 years of preparation crumble in real time. The kids are at Westfield Elementary until 3:15, I said, my voice stronger now despite the tremor in my hands. You can call the school if you want to verify that, Mark. He waved dismissively. Always with the excuses. This is exactly what I'm talking about. He turned back to Rebecca, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Ms. Morrison, I recognize you from the business journals. You run a family-friendly company, don't you? Surely you can see how problematic this is. Mr. Chen, Jennifer interrupted, standing up from her chair. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is highly inappropriate. Inappropriate? Mark's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. What's inappropriate is a mother abandoning her responsibilities to chase some fantasy career. Sarah, you had your chance to work. You chose to stay home with Emma and Jake, remember? You can't just decide to flip a switch when it's convenient. The words hit like physical blows. He was rewriting history in front of my potential employers, turning my forced isolation into voluntary choice, my financial dependence into personal failing. And the worst part was watching their faces, the subtle shift from sympathy to doubt, the way Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly as she processed Mark's version of events. That's not what happened, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. How could I explain 3 years of systematic control in 30 seconds? How could I make them understand that every decision to stay home had been manipulated, pressured, demanded? Mark opened his folder wider, pulling out what looked like official documents. I have a custody agreement right here, dated and notarized. Page 3 clearly states that Sarah is responsible for childcare coordination on alternating weeks. This week is her week, which means... Stop. The word came out louder than I intended, surprising everyone including myself. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're lying, Mark. Today is Tuesday, October 15th. Your custody week starts Friday, October 18th, and you know it. Emma has soccer practice until 4:30, and Jake has chess club until 4 o'clock. They won't even be ready for pickup until after 5. For just a moment, I saw a flicker of something cross his face, annoyance that I'd pushed back, maybe even surprise that I'd contradicted him so directly in front of strangers. David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should reschedule this interview for another time when you can resolve your family situation. My heart sank. Reschedule meant never. It meant they'd move on to the next candidate, someone without a volatile ex-husband who crashed professional meetings. Someone less complicated. That won't be necessary, Mark said smoothly. Sarah, get your things. We'll discuss this at home. At home. Not my home, I lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away. Mark still lived in our old house, the one with the marble countertops and 3-car garage that I'd helped pay for before he convinced me to quit working. I'm not going anywhere with you, I said, surprised by my own steadiness. This interview is important, Mark. The kids are safe at school, and you have no legal right to be here. His mask slipped slightly. No legal right? I'm their father, Sarah. I have every right to ensure they're being properly cared for instead of neglected while their mother plays dress-up in some corporate boardroom. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I could feel my chance slipping away with every passing second, but something inside me refused to back down this time. Not here. Not in front of these people who represented everything I'd been fighting to reclaim. Security, Jennifer said quietly into her phone. Conference room B, please. The word security seemed to snap Mark back into performance mode. His expression shifted instantly from barely contained anger to wounded confusion, like he was the victim being unfairly persecuted. Security? Really? He looked around the room with practiced hurt. For a father concerned about his children's welfare? He turned to Rebecca, appealing directly to her. Ms. Morrison, I researched your company before coming here. Morrison and Associates prides itself on work-life balance, doesn't it? On supporting families? Rebecca's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Mr. Chen, our company values are not the issue here. Your disruption of a professional interview is. Disruption? Mark pulled out his phone with theatrical flair. Let me call Westfield Elementary right now. Let's see if Emma and Jake Chen are actually where Sarah claims they are. My stomach clenched. Of course they were at school. I'd dropped them off myself at 7:45 a.m., kissed Jake's forehead while he complained about his math test, reminded Emma to turn in her permission slip for the field trip to the science center. But Mark's confidence was so absolute, so convincing, that for a terrifying moment I wondered if I'd gotten the date wrong. He dialed with deliberate slowness, putting the phone on speaker. Westfield Elementary, this is Mark Chen. I need to verify that my children, Emma and Jake Chen, are currently at school. The receptionist's cheerful voice filled the conference room. Oh, hi Mr. Chen. Yes, both kids are here. Emma's in 3rd period art class, and Jake's in the library for study hall. Did you need me to get them for you? The relief that flooded through me was so intense I had to grip the edge of the table. Mark's face went very still. No, that's fine. Thank you. He ended the call quickly, but the damage was done. David was staring at him with open incredulity. Jennifer's expression had shifted from uncomfortable to frankly hostile. So, Rebecca said coolly, the children are exactly where Sarah said they would be. At school. Where they belong at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Mark recovered quickly, he always did. Well, of course they're there now, but Sarah should have been available for early dismissal if needed. What if there was an emergency? What if? There is no emergency, I interrupted, my voice stronger now. You created this entire scenario, Mark. The question is why. For a split second, something flickered across his face, panic, maybe, or calculation. Then he smiled that familiar smile, the one that used to charm my friends at dinner parties before he systematically convinced me to stop seeing them. Sarah, you're being paranoid again. This is exactly the kind of dramatic thinking that made our marriage so difficult. He turned to the panel apologetically. She's been struggling since the divorce. Makes up conspiracy theories, sees malicious intent where there's just genuine concern for our children's well-being. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost believed it myself for a moment. Almost. But something had changed in me during these 3 years of rebuilding. Maybe it was the nights I'd spent reading parenting books, determined to be better than the anxious, isolated person he'd molded me into. Maybe it was watching Emma stand up to a playground bully last month with fierce confidence. Maybe it was simply being away from his influence long enough to remember who I used to be. My thinking isn't dramatic, I said clearly. You're lying. You knew exactly where the kids were because you have the same school calendar I do. You came here to sabotage this interview, and I want to know why. Sabotage? He laughed, but it sounded forced. Sarah, the world doesn't revolve around you. I was genuinely concerned about. How did you know I was here? The question stopped him mid-sentence. The room went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and distant traffic sounds from the street below. How did you know I was here, Mark? I didn't tell you about this interview. His pause lasted exactly one beat too long. Your sister mentioned it when I called about switching weekends, he said, but his usual confidence wavered. Amy said you had some kind of meeting today. My blood turned to ice. You didn't call Amy. And even if you had, she doesn't know what company I was interviewing with or what floor or what time. I turned to face him fully, no longer caring about the 3 sets of eyes watching our marriage implode in real time. So I'll ask again, how did you know I was here? Mark's jaw tightened. Behind him, I could see 2 security guards approaching through the glass walls, their presence somehow making this whole nightmare feel more real. Sarah, you're being ridiculous. Can we please discuss this privately instead of airing our personal issues in front of? No. The word came out sharp and final. You made this public when you crashed my interview. You wanted an audience for whatever this is, so let's finish it. Jennifer was typing rapidly on her phone, probably documenting everything for HR purposes. David looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But Rebecca was watching Mark with a calculating stare of someone who'd built a successful business by reading people, and I could see her drawing conclusions. The security guards reached the doorway. Is there a problem here? The taller one asked. Mark immediately shifted into his executive persona, the one he used with waiters and customer service representatives, all barely contained authority and wounded dignity. No problem, officers. Just a family misunderstanding. My ex-wife has a tendency toward dramatic overreactions, and I was simply trying to. I'd like him removed from the building, I interrupted, surprised by my own clarity. He has no business being here, he's disrupted my interview with false claims about our custody arrangement, and he's refusing to leave voluntarily. Ma'am, is this your husband? The security guard asked me. Ex-husband. We've been divorced for 8 months. Mark stepped forward. Look, this is clearly a miscommunication. Sarah's been under a lot of stress lately, the divorce was hard on her, and she's been struggling to adjust to single motherhood. I was just concerned when she missed her pickup time. What pickup time? Rebecca's voice cut through his explanation like a blade. You just confirmed with the school that both children are exactly where they should be. Mark's face flushed slightly. Well, yes, but nothing. Jennifer stood up. Mr. Chen, you disrupted our interview with false information, made unfounded accusations about Ms. Chen's parenting, and now you're attempting to manipulate the situation further. I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. This is ridiculous, Mark said, but I could hear the edge of panic creeping into his voice. Sarah, be reasonable. You know how important the kid's schedule is. You know how you get when things are disrupted. How I get. Like I was the unstable one. Like my perfectly reasonable need for routine and predictability, developed after years of walking on eggshells around his moods, was some kind of character flaw. The only thing being disrupted here is my interview, I said. By you. Deliberately. The second security guard was speaking quietly into his radio. Mark glanced between them, clearly calculating his next move. I knew that look, it was the same expression he got when a business deal wasn't going his way and he was deciding whether to push harder or retreat and regroup. Fine, he said finally. I can see this isn't the time or place for a rational conversation. Sarah, we'll discuss this tonight when I pick up the kids. You're not picking up the kids tonight, I said. Your custody week starts Friday at 6 p.m., just like it has every other week for the past 8 months. Mark smiled then, the cold, calculating smile that used to make my stomach drop. Actually, Sarah, you might want to check your calendar again. I had my lawyer send over some revised paperwork last week. Didn't you get it? My heart started pounding. What revised paperwork? The custody modification we discussed. Starting this week, I'll be taking the kids Tuesday through Thursday as well. It's better for their stability, don't you think? More consistent father figure presence. The room felt like it was tilting. You can't just modify custody arrangements without. Without what? Without consulting you? His smile widened. Sarah, you seem to forget that I have just as many parental rights as you do. More, actually, considering my financial stability compared to. He gestured vaguely at my interview setup, my carefully assembled portfolio, my desperate attempt to rebuild a career. Well. This. Rebecca Morrison's voice cut through the tension like steel. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Chen from the building. Now. The security guards moved toward Mark, but he held up his hands in mock surrender. No need for dramatics. I'm leaving. He straightened his tie with deliberate calm. Sarah, I'll be at the house at 5:30 to collect Emma and Jake. Make sure they have their overnight bags packed. Mark, stop, I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay composed. You can't just change custody arrangements by sending paperwork. That's not how this works. Isn't it? He pulled out his phone again, this time scrolling through what looked like emails. Let me see, yes, here it is. Filed with King County Family Court last Thursday, October 10th. Emergency modification due to concerns about custodial parent stability and employment status. He looked up at me with false sympathy. Really, Sarah, you should read your mail more carefully. My mind raced. Last Thursday I'd been at Emma's parent-teacher conference until 6, then home making dinner and helping Jake with his science project about volcano eruptions. When would I have had time to read legal documents? When did I ever have time for anything beyond keeping our small world running smoothly on my pathetic budget? Emergency modification? Jennifer's voice was sharp. Based on what emergency? Mark turned his attention to her, and I saw him making rapid calculations. Ms. Walsh, I appreciate your concern, but this is really a private family matter. The court documents speak for themselves. Show me the documents, I said, extending my hand. If you filed something with the court, I have a right to see it. You'll get your copy in the mail, just like everyone else. Mark pocketed his phone. The court doesn't operate on your timeline, Sarah. Rebecca stood up slowly, her expression cold enough to frost glass. Mr. Chen, in my 23 years of running this company, I have never seen such a blatant attempt at manipulation and intimidation. She walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. You want to know what I think? I think you found out about this interview somehow, and you're trying to sabotage it. Ms. Morrison, I assure you. I think, Rebecca continued, that you're threatened by your ex-wife's attempt to rebuild her career. And I think you're using your children as weapons to control her. The color drained from Mark's face. That's a very serious accusation. Yes, it is. Rebecca's voice was deadly quiet. And if I'm right, you've made a serious error in judgment by bringing your domestic manipulation tactics into my place of business. I watched Mark realize that he'd miscalculated badly. Rebecca Morrison wasn't some suburban mom he could charm or intimidate. She was a CEO who'd probably dealt with her share of manipulative men trying to undermine women in business. The security guards are waiting, Mr. Chen, Jennifer said pointedly. Mark straightened his shoulders, reaching for dignity. This isn't over, Sarah. 5:30, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Actually, I heard myself saying, it is over. Whatever game you're playing, whatever you're really after, it stops now. Something flickered in his eyes. I don't know what you mean. But I was starting to understand. The timing was too perfect, his knowledge too specific, his confidence too absolute. Mark never did anything without calculating the angles first. He taught me that during our marriage, every decision was strategic, every move planned 3 steps ahead. How much would I make in this position? I asked suddenly. If I got hired here, what would my salary be? Mark's face went very still. I have no idea. Because if I made $78,000 a year, that would change our alimony arrangement, wouldn't it? You'd have to pay me less. A lot less. The silence in the room was deafening. The silence stretched until I could hear my own heartbeat. Mark's face had gone completely blank, the expression he got when opposing counsel landed a hit during depositions. Sarah, that's what, Mark? Accurate? I felt something clicking into place, puzzle pieces I'd been too stressed and exhausted to see clearly. You pay me $2,800 a month in alimony. But only while my income stays below a certain threshold, right? What was it again? $45,000 annually? Jennifer was staring at Mark with undisguised disgust. David had his phone out, probably Googling whether this level of drama was normal for corporate interviews. Rebecca looked like she was watching a particularly fascinating chess match. The court determines alimony based on multiple factors, Mark said carefully. Your employment status is just one consideration. My employment status that you controlled for 3 years. My voice was getting stronger with each word. You convinced me to quit Hendrix Communications right after Emma was born. Said daycare was too expensive, that I'd regret missing her milestones. Then when Jake came along, suddenly one kid in daycare was too expensive. Then my marketing skills were getting stale and I should focus on being present for the kids. Mark's jaw tightened. Sarah, this isn't the place. You're right. The place for this conversation was our marriage counselor's office, but you refused to go. I turned to Rebecca, who was listening with rapt attention. He isolated me systematically. Made me financially dependent, then used that dependence to justify why I couldn't leave. Classic pattern. That's enough, Mark snapped, his composure finally cracking. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? I pulled out my phone, opening the calculator app. Let's do some math. If I make $78,000 a year, that's $6,500 a month. According to our divorce decree, your alimony obligation drops to zero once my income exceeds $4,200 monthly. So this job would save you. I punched in the numbers. $33,600 per year. Mark's face had gone red. The court. The court made that determination based on the financial discrepancy you created by forcing me out of the workforce. I was on a roll now, 3 years of suppressed anger giving my words razor edges. But here's what I don't understand, Mark. How did you know I was interviewing here? How did you know it was today? How did you know which floor, which conference room? The security guards were still waiting by the door, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Rebecca held up one finger, clearly indicating they should wait. I told you, Amy mentioned. I called Amy last night after you left. Rebecca's voice cut through his lie like a scalpel. Told her we were rescheduling this interview to today instead of Thursday because of a client emergency. Amy was the only person who knew about the change. My stomach dropped. You what? Rebecca's smile was sharp as broken glass. We weren't scheduled to meet until Thursday at 10 a.m., Sarah. I moved it to today because Morrison and Associates was presenting to a major client Thursday morning, and I wanted to give you my full attention. She turned to Mark. The question is, how did you know about a schedule change that was decided at 8 p.m. last night? Mark's face cycled through several emotions, surprise, calculation, panic. There must be some mistake. The only mistake, Rebecca said coldly, was thinking you could manipulate the situation. She pulled out her own phone. Amy Chen? This is Rebecca Morrison. Yes, we're still in the interview actually. I have a question for you. Did you mention Sarah's interview to anyone? Anyone at all? Amy's voice was tinny but audible through the speaker. Of course not. I wouldn't do that. Sarah specifically asked me not to tell anyone, especially not Mark. Why? Is everything okay? Rebecca's eyes never left Mark's face. Did you receive any calls from Mark recently? Maybe about switching custody weekends? Mark? No, he hasn't called me in months. Not since the divorce was finalized. Sarah, what's going on? You're scaring me. Everything's fine, Amy. We'll talk later. Rebecca ended the call and slipped her phone back into her jacket pocket. So, Mr. Chin. Care to try again? The color drained from Mark's face so completely I thought he might actually faint. His mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. I must have gotten my information mixed up, he stammered, but his usual smooth confidence had evaporated entirely. Maybe I saw something on Sarah's calendar when I picked up Jake's soccer cleats last weekend. You haven't been in my apartment since the divorce was finalized, I said, my voice deadly quiet. And I don't keep my interview schedule written on any calendar you could access. A horrible thought was forming in the back of my mind. Mark, how exactly did you find out about this? The silence stretched unbearably. Jennifer was taking notes on her tablet again, probably documenting every word for what was turning into the most spectacular interview disaster in Morrison and Associates history. David looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. But Rebecca was watching Mark with the focused intensity of a hawk circling prey. Perhaps, Rebecca said slowly, we should discuss how Mr. Chin obtained access to confidential employment information. Because that's what this is, Sarah's interview schedule, salary details, even her application status would all be considered private information. Mark's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I didn't access anything confidential. I would never. Wouldn't you? I interrupted, pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. Mark, what's the name of your company's IT contractor? The one who handles all your cybersecurity? His face went ashen. Sarah, that's completely unrelated. Data Secure Solutions, I continued, my voice gaining strength. Run by your college buddy Brian Matthews. The same Brian Matthews who used to brag at barbecues about being able to find anything on anyone if the price was right. Jennifer's fingers had stopped moving across her tablet screen. She was staring at Mark with open horror. You're being paranoid, Mark said, but his voice cracked on the words. I would never violate your privacy like that. Like you violated my financial independence? My career prospects? My ability to support our children? I stood up, my hands surprisingly steady despite the rage coursing through my veins. Tell me, Mark, what else did Brian find? My bank account information? My email passwords? Have you been monitoring my job applications this whole time? That's a serious accusation, he managed, loosening his tie slightly. Sweat had appeared on his forehead despite the conference room's air conditioning. Rebecca pulled out her business card and handed it to me. Sarah, I think you should document this conversation immediately after we're finished here. Every detail you can remember. Document it for what? Mark demanded, some of his bluster returning. For the police report she's going to file, Rebecca said calmly. Corporate espionage is a federal crime, Mr. Chin. If you use professional resources to illegally access Ms. Chen's private information, that's not just a divorce matter, it's a criminal matter. The word criminal seemed to hit Mark like a physical blow. He actually took a step backward, bumping into one of the security guards. Now wait just a minute, he said, his voice rising. You can't prove anything. This is all speculation and... Is it? I pulled out my own phone, opening my email app. Because I just remembered something interesting. Last week, I got a password reset notification from my LinkedIn account. I thought it was spam, but now. I scrolled through my deleted messages. Here it is. Password reset requested at 11:47 p.m. on October 9th. I was asleep by 10:30 that night. Mark's face had gone from red to gray. Lots of people get phishing emails. And then there's my Indeed account. Also reset on October 9th, at 11:52 p.m. I looked up at him, everything crystal clear now. You've been tracking my job applications, haven't you? Monitoring my interviews, probably sabotaging other opportunities one never even knew about. The security guard cleared his throat. Sir, we really need you to come with us now. Mark's face had gone from red to gray to something approaching green. He looked around the room desperately, like a cornered animal searching for an escape route that didn't exist. You can't prove any of this, he said, but his voice had lost all its earlier authority. Password resets happen all the time. Your accounts could have been compromised by anyone. Could they? I was surprised by how calm I sounded, how clear my thinking had become now that the pieces were falling into place. Because I'm also remembering that interview I had 3 weeks ago with Cascade Marketing. Remember, Mark? I mentioned it when you picked up the kids that Friday? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I don't recall. I got a call 2 hours before the interview. The hiring manager said there had been a family emergency and they needed to reschedule. Except when I called back the next week, they said the position had been filled internally. I stepped closer to him, watching his face carefully. Funny thing is, their receptionist seemed confused when I mentioned the family emergency. Said no one in their office had any emergencies that day. Jennifer was typing furiously on her tablet now. David had his phone out, definitely recording. Rebecca looked like she was mentally calculating lawsuit damages. Sarah, you're being irrational, Mark said, but sweat was beading on his upper lip despite the conference room's Arctic air conditioning. Just because a few interviews didn't work out doesn't mean. A few? I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through my job search folder. Data Point Analytics called to cancel an hour before our meeting due to scheduling conflicts. Northwest Creative Group hiring manager got food poisoning 30 minutes before my interview. Sterling Communications, their building had a plumbing emergency that forced them to close for the day. With each company name, Mark seemed to shrink a little more. The expensive suit that had looked so authoritative when he burst through the door now hung on him like a costume he was no longer entitled to wear. That's just bad luck, he stammered. These things happen in business. Rebecca's laugh was sharp and humorless. Mr. Chen, I've been in business for 23 years. I've seen hiring managers get sick, I've seen plumbing emergencies, I've even seen genuine family crises. What I've never seen is a pattern of mysterious cancellations targeting one specific candidate. She leaned forward slightly. But I have seen industrial sabotage. And if that's what this is, you've made a catastrophic mistake. Industrial sabotage? Mark's voice cracked on the words. That's completely ridiculous. I'm a senior account executive at Morrison Bradley Financial, not some corporate spy. The moment the words left his mouth, I saw Rebecca's expression shift to something approaching predatory satisfaction. Morrison Bradley Financial, she repeated slowly. Michael Morrison's firm. You know Michael? Mark's face had gone completely white now. Michael Morrison is my brother, Rebecca said, her voice deadly quiet. And if you've been using corporate resources from his firm to stalk and sabotage your ex-wife, he's going to be very interested to hear about it. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the building's ventilation system humming overhead. Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, no sound emerging. Oh God, he whispered finally. Rebecca Morrison. I never made the connection. No, Rebecca said, standing up slowly. I don't imagine you did. Just like you didn't imagine that your pattern of harassment might eventually target someone with the resources to fight back. She pulled out her phone. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Chen out. And make sure he understands that he's banned from this building permanently. This isn't over, Mark said desperately as the security guards moved toward him. Sarah, you can't just. Actually, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice, I think it is. The security guards each took one of Mark's arms, but he shook them off with whatever dignity he had left. I can walk myself out, he said stiffly, straightening his tie one final time. But as they reached the conference room door, he turned back to me with that familiar expression, the one that used to make me question my own memory, my own sanity. Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. The custody hearing is next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Judge Patterson will want to know why you're prioritizing job interviews over our children's stability. His voice had regained some of its earlier smoothness. And when I show him the documentation of your erratic behavior, your paranoid accusations, your inability to co-parent effectively. My blood turned to ice. What custody hearing? Mark, there's no hearing scheduled for. Check your mail, Sarah. The notice was sent to your registered address last Friday. He smiled that cold, calculating smile. Emergency custody review. I filed a motion for primary custody based on concerns about your mental state and ability to provide stable housing. The room started spinning. You can't just file for emergency custody without. Without what? Without cause? Mark's confidence was returning now that he'd landed a hit. Sarah, you just spent 20 minutes making wild accusations about corporate espionage and stalking. In front of witnesses. Does that sound like the behavior of a stable parent to you? Jennifer stood up abruptly. Mr. Chen, you're using intimidation tactics too. I'm protecting my children, Mark interrupted, his voice rising again. From a mother who's more concerned with playing office than picking them up from school. A mother who sees conspiracies everywhere, who can't accept that maybe, just maybe, she's not qualified for the job she's applying for. The gaslighting hit me like a physical blow. For a terrifying moment, I could feel myself starting to doubt everything. Was I being paranoid? Had I imagined the pattern of cancelled interviews? Was Mark right that I was just looking for someone to blame for my failures? But then I caught Rebecca's eye. She was looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, respect. Belief. The look of someone who recognized truth when she heard it. Mr. Chen, Rebecca said quietly, I'm going to give you one piece of free advice. Stop talking. Every word out of your mouth right now is being documented, and if even half of what Ms. Chen suspects is true, you're building a case against yourself. Mark's jaw tightened. Ms. Morrison, I understand you want to support Sarah, but you don't know her like I do. You don't know about the anxiety attacks, the depression after Jake was born, the way she obsesses over every little detail until she can't function. That's enough, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. You don't get to weaponize my postpartum depression. You don't get to turn the isolation you created into evidence of my instability. I didn't create anything, Sarah. I supported you through a difficult time. You supported me right out of my career, my friendships, my independence. I turned to face him fully, no longer caring about the audience. You convinced me I was too anxious to work, too depressed to see friends, too scattered to manage our finances. And now you want to use those same vulnerabilities to take my children away. Mark's face flushed red. Our children deserve better than. Than what? Than a mother who's fighting to rebuild her life. Than a mother who's trying to provide financial stability instead of depending on alimony from her manipulative ex-husband? Ladies and gentlemen, the taller security guard interrupted, we really need to move this conversation out of the building. But Mark wasn't finished. Sarah, think about what you're doing. If you pursue these ridiculous accusations, if you try to drag my professional reputation through the mud, how do you think that's going to look to Judge Patterson? A vindictive ex-wife making up stories about cyberstalking and corporate sabotage? The threat was crystal clear, delivered with surgical precision. Drop this, or lose your kids. I felt something shift inside me then, a door slamming shut on 3 years of fear and self-doubt. You know what, Mark? I hope you recorded this entire conversation. Because I want Judge Patterson to hear exactly how you operate. I pulled out my phone, checking the voice memo app I'd started running the moment he walked through that door. 43 minutes of documented harassment, intimidation, and threats. Should make for interesting listening at that custody hearing you're so confident about. Mark's face went completely white. You recorded this? Every word. I smiled for the first time since he'd crashed through that door. Funny thing about divorce lawyers, Mark, they teach you to document everything. Mark's face went from white to gray, his expensive suit suddenly looking like it was 2 sizes too big. The recording had clearly rattled him more than anything else I'd said, which told me everything I needed to know about how much of this conversation he'd been planning to deny later. You can't use that recording, he said quickly. Washington is a 2-party consent state for recordings. Anything you captured without my permission is inadmissible in court. I almost smiled. Almost. Actually, Mark, Washington is a 1-party consent state. I should know. I researched it extensively after our divorce was finalized, and you kept showing up at Emma's soccer games to discuss my parenting choices in front of the other parents. Rebecca pulled out her business card and handed it to me. Sarah, when you file your police report, make sure you mention that this conversation took place in a commercial building with security cameras. Our conference rooms have audio recording for liability purposes. It's posted right there on the wall. Mark's head whipped around to stare at the small sign by the door that I'd been too nervous to notice during my interview prep. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. This is harassment, he said weakly. I came here out of legitimate concern for my children, and you're all treating me like some kind of criminal. No, Jennifer said, closing her tablet with a decisive snap. You came here to sabotage your ex-wife's employment opportunity using illegally obtained information about her interview schedule. That's not parental concern, that's stalking. David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Should we call the police? This seems like it's moved beyond a simple domestic dispute. Mark's panic was visible now, beads of sweat collecting at his hairline despite his attempts to maintain composure. There's no need to involve law enforcement. This is clearly a misunderstanding that got out of hand. Is it? Rebecca walked over to the conference room phone and lifted the handset. Because I'm thinking Detective Sarah Chen might want to hear about how her interview schedule ended up in your possession less than 12 hours after it was finalized. Detective Sarah Chen? Mark's voice cracked slightly. My cousin, Rebecca said casually, beginning to dial. Works corporate fraud division for Seattle PD. She's going to find it very interesting that a senior account executive at Morrison Bradley Financial may have used company resources to illegally access private employment records. Wait. Mark's composure finally shattered completely. You don't understand. Sarah's salary at this position would eliminate my alimony obligation entirely. That's $33,600 a year. Do you have any idea what that means to someone trying to maintain two households? The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Jennifer actually gasped. David's mouth fell open. Rebecca slowly replaced the phone handset without completing her call. So you admit it, I said quietly. This was never about the kids or custody schedules or my fitness as a parent. This was about money. Mark ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, leaving it disheveled for the first time since I'd known him. Sarah, you don't understand the financial pressure I'm under. The house payments, my car lease, the country club membership I need for client development. The country club membership you need? My voice rose dangerously. Mark, I'm feeding our children generic cereal and store-brand peanut butter while you're worried about your golf privileges? That's different, he said desperately. My professional image directly impacts my earning potential, which benefits Emma and Jake in the long run. No. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. What would benefit Emma and Jake is having a mother who can afford to buy them winter coats that actually fit instead of hoping they don't outgrow last year's jackets before spring. The security guards moved closer, clearly ready to end this conversation by force if necessary. But Mark held up his hands in surrender, his fight finally draining out of him completely. Sarah, please. Can't we work something out? Maybe a gradual reduction in alimony instead of eliminating it entirely? I could help you find a position that pays less but still gives you the career satisfaction you're looking for. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, even caught red-handed, he was trying to negotiate terms that would keep him in control of my financial future. Get out, I said quietly. Just, get out. Mark didn't move. Instead, he pulled out his phone with shaking hands and began scrolling frantically through what looked like a contacts list. Actually, Sarah, before I leave, there's something else you should know. His voice had taken on a desperate edge that made my stomach clench. I wasn't just monitoring your job applications. The room went dead silent. Rebecca's hand froze halfway to her phone. Jennifer's typing stopped abruptly. What do you mean? I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want the answer. Mark's fingers were trembling as he held up his phone screen. Brian didn't just hack your email accounts. He's been monitoring your text messages, your bank transactions, your credit report. His laugh sounded unhinged. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you started putting money aside in that savings account at Pacific Northwest Credit Union? My blood turned to ice. The secret account I'd been building for months, $20 here, $30 there, scraped together from grocery money and birthday cash from my parents. The emergency fund I was building in case Mark tried to use his lawyer to manipulate our custody arrangement. That's illegal, Jennifer breathed. That's identity theft. Is it? Mark's desperation was morphing into something uglier, vindictive rage. I'm still listed as an authorized user on Sarah's credit monitoring service. Technically, I have legitimate access to her financial information. From when we were married, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark, we've been divorced for 8 months. Have we? He scrolled to something else on his phone, his movements becoming more frantic. Because according to the King County records I pulled this morning, there's been a filing error with our divorce decree. Apparently the final judgment was never properly recorded due to a clerical mistake in the court system. The world tilted sideways. That's impossible. Is it? Mark's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Funny how these bureaucratic mix-ups happen sometimes. Especially when you have friends in the right places. He turned to Rebecca with mock sympathy. I'm afraid Sarah may have misrepresented her legal status to you, Ms. Morrison. Technically, we're still married. Which means any employment contract she signs might need spousal approval. Rebecca's face had gone stone cold. Mr. Chen, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, Mark interrupted. I'm stating facts. Our divorce was supposed to be final on February 15th. But due to a processing error that's only just been discovered, the decree was never filed with the state. We received notice yesterday that the case needs to be readjudicated. My knees nearly buckled. If Mark was telling the truth, if our divorce wasn't legally final, then he still had access to my financial information. He could still make legal decisions about my employment. He could still control every aspect of my life just like he had during our marriage. Show me the notice, I managed to say through numb lips. It's at home with the rest of the legal documents. Mark's confidence was returning as he watched me crumble. Along with the amended custody petition that reflects our actual marital status. Turns out you can't file for divorced parent custody when you're still technically married. David was staring at his hands like he wished he could disappear entirely. Jennifer looked like she was witnessing a car crash in slow motion. But Rebecca was studying Mark with the focused intensity of someone who'd spent decades identifying corporate liars. Mr. Chen, she said slowly, are you telling me that you discovered a clerical error in your divorce proceedings at the exact same time your ex-wife landed a job interview that would eliminate your alimony payments? Mark's jaw tightened. Timing is irrelevant. Legal facts are legal facts. Legal facts, Rebecca repeated. Like the legal fact that tampering with court records is a felony? Or the legal fact that falsifying government documents carries a mandatory prison sentence? The color drained from Mark's face again. I didn't falsify anything. I'm simply reporting what the court told me. Which court? I found my voice, though it sounded strange and distant. Mark, which specific court office told you about this alleged filing error? His pause lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. King County Family Court. Division 3. I spoke with a clerk in the records department. What was the clerk's name? Another pause. Longer this time. I didn't get her name. But she said. Call them. Rebecca's voice cut through his stammering like a blade. Call them right now. Put it on speaker. Let's verify this alleged clerical error together. Mark's face had gone completely gray. His hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped his phone. I don't think that's necessary, he said weakly. The documentation speaks for itself. Then show us the documentation, I said, my strength returning as his lies became more obvious. If you received official notice yesterday, you should have it with you. You came here prepared for everything else. The silence stretched until I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Mark's expensive suit looked rumpled now, his perfect hair disheveled, his practiced composure completely shattered. Finally, he whispered, I can't. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Mark's face had gone completely white, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume he'd stolen from someone more important. You can't show us the documentation, Rebecca repeated slowly, because it doesn't exist. Mark's mouth opened and closed twice before any sound emerged. The paperwork is at home, I told you. No. I stood up, my legs steadier than they'd been all afternoon. The paperwork doesn't exist because our divorce was finalized 8 months ago. Because you're lying about the clerical error, just like you lied about the custody schedule and the emergency hearing. Sarah, I'm being what, Mark? Rational? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to my photos. Because I have pictures of our finalized divorce decree. Certified copies. Filed February 15th with King County Family Court, case number 2024-3-01847-9. I held up the screen. Signed by Judge Patricia Williams, witnessed by court reporter Michelle Santos, recorded in the state database at 3:47 p.m. Mark's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Those could be outdated. Could they? Rebecca was already dialing her phone. Let's find out. King County Family Court, this is Rebecca Morrison from Morrison and Associates. I need to verify the status of a divorce decree filed February 15th, 2024. She rattled off the case number I'd provided. Yes, I'll hold. The 30 seconds of hold music felt like an eternity. Mark was sweating through his shirt now, dark patches appearing under his arms despite the conference room's Arctic air conditioning. David had his phone out, clearly recording everything. Jennifer was typing so fast her fingers were practically smoking. Yes, I'm here, Rebecca said suddenly. The decree is valid and properly recorded? Filed February 15th at 3:47 p.m.? No amendments or modifications since that date? She paused, listening. Thank you so much. She ended the call and looked directly at Mark. Congratulations, Mr. Chin. Your divorce is final, properly recorded, and has been legally binding for exactly 8 months and 12 days. Mark's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself, his face cycling through about 6 different shades of pale. There must be some mistake, he whispered. Brian showed me the record search. He said. Brian lied, I said simply. Just like you've been lying. About the custody hearing, about the alimony modifications, about having any legal right to control my employment. I took a step closer to him. The question is why, Mark? Why go to such elaborate lengths? Why risk criminal charges for identity theft and harassment? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because you left me. The words were so quiet, so broken, that for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Mark, you filed for divorce. You said our marriage was irretrievably broken and that you wanted a fresh start. I filed because I thought you'd fight for us, he said, his voice cracking. I thought you'd beg me to reconsider, promise to be better, try harder. Instead, you hired a lawyer and started dividing assets like our 10-year marriage was a failed business merger. Rebecca was watching this exchange with the fascination of someone witnessing a complete psychological breakdown in real time. So you decided to destroy my career prospects instead? I asked. Mark's laugh sounded hollow. I decided to remind you that you need me. That without my support, you're just another desperate single mother competing for entry-level positions with recent college graduates. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about money or custody or even control. This was about punishment. Pure and simple revenge for having the audacity to let him go. Well, I said quietly, I guess we'll find out. Jennifer cleared her throat, breaking the heavy silence that had settled over the conference room. Mr. Chen, I need to inform you that Morrison and Associates has a strict policy regarding harassment of potential employees. This conversation will be reported to the Seattle Police Department's Cybercrime Division within the hour. Mark's head snapped up. Cybercrime Division? Identity theft, unauthorized access to private accounts, stalking through digital means, these are federal offenses, Rebecca said, her voice clinical. My brother Michael is going to be very interested to learn that one of his senior account executives has been using company resources for illegal surveillance. I never used company resources, Mark said quickly, too quickly. Brian's work was completely separate from Morrison Bradley Financial. Rebecca's smile was sharp as a blade. Really? Because according to Data Secure Solutions website, Morrison Bradley is listed as one of their primary corporate clients. $50,000 annual cybersecurity contract, renewed just last month. I watched Mark's face crumble as he realized his mistake. That doesn't mean. It means you used your company's IT contractor to stalk your ex-wife, David said quietly, speaking up for the first time since Mark's arrival. Jesus Christ, man. Do you have any idea what you've done? My phone buzzed with a text message. Emma's school. My heart clenched as I read it. Mark, I said, my voice deadly calm, did you call Westfield Elementary today? Besides the call you made from this conference room? His face went white again. Why? I held up my phone. Because I just received a message from the principal's office. Apparently, a man claiming to be Emma's father called at 1:15 p.m. to report that I was having a mental health crisis and might show up at school in an unstable condition to collect the children early. The security guard straightened. Rebecca's expression shifted from professional anger to genuine alarm. The school is now under the impression that I'm having some kind of breakdown, I continued, my voice shaking with barely controlled fury. They've flagged Emma and Jake's accounts for enhanced monitoring and want me to come in tomorrow morning with documentation from a mental health professional before they'll allow normal pickup privileges. Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. You called their school, I said, each word dropping like a stone into still water. You told them their mother was mentally unstable. You terrified the administration staff, probably confused and scared my children, and created a paper trail of alleged mental health concerns that you'll undoubtedly try to use in whatever fake custody hearing you're planning. Sarah, I was genuinely concerned. Stop. Rebecca's voice cut through his attempt at explanation. Mr. Chen, you've just admitted to filing false reports with an educational institution about a parent's mental state. That's not just harassment, that's potentially child endangerment through emotional manipulation. Jennifer was on her phone now, speaking in rapid, hushed tones to someone who sounded like legal counsel. David had moved closer to the door, probably ready to bolt the moment this nightmare ended. But I felt something shifting inside me, not panic this time, but cold, crystalline clarity. Mark had overplayed his hand. In his desperation to control the narrative, he created a documented trail of harassment, lies, and illegal activity that even the most sympathetic judge couldn't ignore. You know what the interesting thing is, Mark? I said, pulling up my voice memo app again. I've been recording our conversations for weeks. Every threatening phone call, every concerned text about my parenting, every time you've shown up uninvited to places you knew I'd be. His face went from white to green. How many recordings? 17 separate incidents over the past 2 months. I smiled for the first time since he'd crashed through that door. Want to hear your greatest hits? I pressed play on the first recording, and Mark's voice filled the conference room, cold, calculating, threatening. Sarah, if you keep pushing for more custody time, I'll make sure Judge Patterson knows about your little anxiety problem. Who do you think he'll believe? A successful financial executive or unemployed single mother with a history of mental health issues? Mark lunged for my phone, but the security guard stepped between us. Sir, don't move. I scrolled to another recording from 3 weeks ago. Mark's voice again, you think you can just rebuild your career like nothing happened? I made you, Sarah. Without me, you're nothing. And I can unmake you just as easily. Rebecca's face had gone stone cold. Gentlemen, please place Mr. Chen under citizen's arrest for harassment and stalking. We'll hold him until Seattle PD arrives. You can't do this. Mark's composure finally shattered completely. I'm a senior executive at Morrison Bradley Financial. I have clients, responsibilities. Rebecca corrected, pulling out her phone. Michael? It's Rebecca. I need you to terminate Mark Chen immediately. Yes, right now. Corporate espionage and stalking. I'll explain later, but trust me, you want him out of the building before this hits the news. I watched Mark's face cycle through shock, panic, and dawning realization that his carefully constructed life was imploding in real time. My job, he whispered. Sarah, you can't. I have a mortgage, car payments. Funny, I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. That's exactly what I've been living with while you've been sabotaging my interviews. The difference is, I didn't break any laws trying to solve my financial problems. Jennifer approached me with a business card. Sarah, I want to be very clear about something. Morrison and Associates is still extremely interested in offering you the senior marketing manager position. Your qualifications speak for themselves, and frankly, the way you've handled this situation shows exactly the kind of problem-solving skills we need. My heart stopped. You're still offering me the job? $78,000 annually, full benefits, 3 weeks vacation to start, Rebecca confirmed. When can you begin? Mark made a sound like a wounded animal. The security guards tightened their grip as Seattle PD officers appeared in the doorway, their radios crackling with dispatcher chatter. Officers, we have documented evidence of stalking, identity theft, harassment, and filing false reports, Rebecca said, handing them a folder that Jennifer had somehow compiled during the chaos. The victim has multiple recordings, and we have security footage of the suspect's behavior. As they read Mark his rights, he looked at me with something approaching desperation. Sarah, please. Think about Emma and Jake. Do you really want them to see their father arrested? Do you want them to know? I want them to see their mother standing up for herself, I interrupted. I want them to learn that nobody, not even someone who claims to love you, has the right to control your life through fear and manipulation. The officers led Mark away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his perfect hair disheveled, his carefully maintained facade finally stripped away completely. Rebecca walked over to the conference room window as the police car pulled away. You know, Sarah, in 23 years of running this company, I've never seen anyone handle a crisis with more grace under pressure. I looked around the conference room, my portfolio still spread neatly on the table, my future finally within reach, my children's financial security no longer dependent on the whims of someone who saw my independence as a threat. When do I start? I asked, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the answer.